In the dimly lit attic of an old farmhouse, boxes creaked and settled, each holding memories and mementos of a bygone era. Among them lay a dusty journal, its pages filled with spidery handwriting and sketches of peculiar plants. As I turned the brittle pages, I stumbled upon a sketch that sent a shiver down my spine. A drawing of a flower with an ominous caption, "Devil's Trumpet." This wasn't just any journal. It belonged to my great-great-grandfather, Thomas Inod, a farmer and amateur botanist who lived in the heart of 18th century New England. His journal entries detailed not just the flora he encountered, but the superstitions and fears that plagued his community. As I delved deeper into his writings, a pattern emerged, a recurring theme that hinted at a dark secret buried in our family's past. The grim reality of the vampire panic of New England. You might be asking yourself, what exactly was the vampire panic? Well, picture this. You're a farmer toiling in the fields of 18th century New England. Your days are long and hard, your nights are cold and lonely, and the closest doctor is a day's ride away. Then one by one, your loved ones start to fall ill. At first it seems like a bad case of the flu, but as days turn into weeks, you realize this is something more sinister. Their skin grows pale, their coughs become bloody, and they waste away before your very eyes. You watch helplessly as your family succumbs to what you can only describe as a horrifying wasting disease. Now imagine that after burying your loved ones, you begin to suspect that they're not really dead, that something sinister is keeping them from finding peace. Fearful whispers start to circulate in your community, and soon everyone is talking about vampires. And it wasn't just an idle fear. This was a mass panic that gripped several New England communities, primarily in Rhode Island, Vermont, and Connecticut. But it's important to note that this wasn't happening in some remote village untouched by civilization. This was happening right here in New England, in the United States. The most prominent case during this time was that of Mercy Brown, a young woman from Exeter, Rhode Island, who became the face of the vampire panic. In the dead of winter in 1892, Mercy Brown, a vibrant and beloved young woman, suddenly fell ill with what was then commonly known as consumption, a term used for tuberculosis. Within weeks, her condition worsened and she wasted away. Mercy's passing devastated her family and community. But the tragedy didn't end there. After her burial, her distraught brother Edwin became gravely ill and started wasting away, too. People began to murmur that Mercy was not resting in peace, and that she was somehow feeding on her brother's life force. Soon, Mercy's grave was being dug up in the dead of night, her body exhumed in a desperate attempt to halt the spread of this supposed vampiric curse. The ghastly sight of her relatively fresh corpse fueled their fears and led to further rituals, meant to banish whatever evil was thought to be afflicting her family. Mercy Brown's case became a focal point for the growing panic, highlighting the depths of fear and desperation that people were willing to sink to in the face of a mysterious illness. But why? Why would educated, seemingly sensible people engage in such drastic measures? The answer lies in the context of the time. During the late 19th and early 20th centuries, medical science was still in its infancy. Germs and bacteria were not yet understood, leaving people vulnerable to diseases like tuberculosis, which claimed millions of lives. There was no effective treatment, no cure. And when faced with such terrifying uncertainty, people turned to what they knew, their beliefs and traditions. For many, this meant religion. In their eyes, any misfortune, any illness, any death could be attributed to the devil or his minions. And it wasn't just religious fervor that drove these beliefs. Superstition, folklore, and fear played a significant role as well. The idea of vampires, while prevalent in Eastern European folklore, had not yet found a strong foothold in America. However, the outbreak of tuberculosis and the lack of medical understanding created a fertile ground for such beliefs to take root. Fearful whispers turned into panicked shouts, and soon entire communities were convinced that they were dealing with a real-life vampire crisis. One of the most unsettling aspects of the vampire panic was the lengths to which people went to stop the spread of these supposed vampires. Graves were dug up, bodies exhumed and subjected to bizarre rituals. Sometimes the hearts were cut out and burned, other times the bodies were decapitated or mutilated. It sounds gruesome, but these actions were driven by terror and a desperate need for control. People believed that by removing the source of the supposed curse, they could save their loved ones and prevent the spread of the disease. And who can blame them? Faced with the helplessness that comes with a disease that seems to defy all logic, all understanding, anyone might grasp at such desperate measures. Now, you might be wondering, was there any truth to these fears? Were there actually vampires stalking the night? Well, the answer is a resounding probably not. The signs that people attributed to vampires, things like blood in the sputum, pale skin, and a bloated appearance, are all consistent with the symptoms of tuberculosis. But let's be clear, this was not tuberculosis of vampires. This was tuberculosis that looked like vampires to people who were desperately searching for answers in a world that seemed determined to keep them in the dark. So what was the real cause of these horrors? Simple: fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of losing those close to us, and fear of a world that seemed to have more questions than answers. The vampire panic of New England was a tragic chapter in history, a testament to the power of fear and superstition in the darkest corners of our past. It's a reminder of how far we've come in terms of scientific understanding, but also of how fragile our grasp on rationality can be when confronted with the mysteries of life and death. After uncovering this dark chapter in our family's history, I couldn't help but wonder what my ancestor, Thomas Anand, had witnessed. What stories did he hear? What fears did he observe? Had he, too, fallen prey to the whispers of the vampire panic? As I continued poring over his journal, I noticed something else: a series of pressed flowers, including a small bouquet of devil's trumpets, the plant whose name alone sounded like a warning. Each leaf seemed to stare back at me, silently screaming tales of a community held captive by fear. My research into our family history had uncovered more than just stories of a bygone era. It had opened a window into a world where science and superstition collided, where the line between sanity and fear was frighteningly thin. Through the writings of Thomas Anand, I experienced firsthand the stifling grip of the vampire panic. His descriptions of the rituals, the exhumations, and the theories were not just words on a page. They were a haunting melody of terror that echoed through time. The sketches, the pressed flowers, all bore silent witness to a period when the veil between our world and the realm of nightmares seemed to have thinned. It was a journey that challenged my understanding of human behavior, of how fear can distort reality and drive people to do the unthinkable. Imagine, if you can, a simple farming community going about its daily life, raising crops, tending to livestock, praying for good fortune. Suddenly, a storm brews on the horizon, not of wind and rain, but of sickness and despair. A neighbor falls ill, then another, and soon the community is in chaos. Fear, like a weed, begins to sprout in the cracks of their lives. Whispers slither through the fields, taking root in the minds of the people. Before they know it, they're consumed by the belief that their loved ones are returning from the grave to torment them. This wasn't a figment of their imagination. It was a nightmare woven into their reality. The impact of this panic was profound. Lives were disrupted, families torn apart, and trust in one another eroded. It was a stark reminder of how tenuous our grip on rationality can be in the face of overwhelming fear. The legacy of the vampire panic lives on, not just in history books, but in the shadows of our collective memory. It serves as a cautionary tale, a reminder of the darkness that can lurk in the corners of our minds when reason takes its leave. The panic underscores the complexities of human nature and the lengths to which fear can drive us. It's a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, but also to the destructive power of unfounded beliefs. In the quiet moments, as I reflect on my findings, I can't help but wonder the strength it must have taken for those who resisted the panic. Those who, despite the pressure to conform, held fast to their beliefs and refused to participate in the gruesome rituals. Their stories, though often lost to history, deserve to be told and remembered. They remind us that even in the darkest of times, the light of reason and compassion can endure. If you've enjoyed this journey into the dark heart of the vampire panic, I invite you to join me on more adventures through history. And if you want to know more about the vampire panic, check out this playlist that covers more stories from around the world. Thank you for joining me today. Until next time, stay curious and remember, sometimes the scariest monsters are the ones we create in our own minds.